Okay, I think we are live. My dashboard says we are live. I'm Joshua Fletcher. You can call me Fletch or whatever other numbskull name you can come up with. I'm here with Glenn, and if you signed up and are watching this, in all likelihood, it's because you saw one of the videos that I've recorded over the last week or so that allude to one of the really major things that shifted in my business and the way I operate in my own life. And just checking feeds just to draw this out a second, right? Okay, I think we're good. So like going back, let me talk about when I was a kid, right? But it's really about that. So one of the ways we typically operate in life, and so we can talk about the default way the mind works and that we work, is that when we encounter an obstacle, and an obstacle is like that word obstacle is one of the things that we've talked about quite a lot on different webinars that Glenn and I have run, and that come up in common lexicon, and the parlance of us having conversations and things like that. The typical response to an obstacle is either to cower and say, "Oh, can't do it anymore," or more energy, more focus, more attention to overcome the obstacle. And today, I want to really talk about a completely separate way of dealing with things that are limiting your success and impact and ability to earn money and be successful in your own life. And like in sports, I always go back to like sports analogies just because it was so much of a part of my life for so long, and Glenn has a lot of this as well. um you get hyped up before a big game. You might get hyped up for a big play, and then you do something great, right? You make a great tackle, you score a touchdown, and it feels like the act of getting yourself motivated and hopped up and putting a lot more effort into a single application of your current power is the way to succeed. And the only time that is the case is if you are already prepared to do what you need to do, meaning that you already have the skills, you already have the knowledge, you have the understanding, you have the physical capability, you have the understanding, and you're just not acting in a way that gets you over that threshold, so to speak, right? And there are absolutely times in life where that is the case. There are a lot of times where we kind of just sink back into what we're doing, and we really don't bring all of ourselves to the table and apply ourselves properly, right? But with digital marketing and business, entrepreneurship, relationships, having a marriage, having kids, having all of these things, most of the time we are not prepared. We do not have all the resources that we necessarily need at that time to just work harder and make it work. We might overcome, we might win an argument, or we might get our kids to behave, or we might get through a certain difficult time, but that's not really the answer, right? There are very there are very few times when, if you're looking at like a long-term goal, you, most people who might be listening to this are looking at really changing how their life feels and what they look at when they see themselves in the mirror and when they open up their bank account. and those types of things. Those situations are exactly what we're going to talk about today and in this series. This I call it like a mini series, right? It's 4 webinars that we're going to be talking about these elements. And in those circumstances, no matter how hard you work, you're going to be able to maximize what you already know, but you're still in a box, right? You've still got a limit on what you can actually do yourself, what you can actually accomplish by spending more time or more effort doing what you can do. And in all likelihood, you probably can achieve more by working harder and actually applying yourself. But I'm not about motivation in that way. I'm not about getting excited and applying yourself harder and more in that fashion. So the way I kind of, I guess, framed what we'd be talking about on this series is there are things that are limiting your effectiveness, your success, your ability to earn money, right? This can be all encompassing. It, we can talk about your life in general, but we're going to really tie it back to business. And one of the things that I I came into, I guess, online business with, which I started 8 years ago, so I was 38, give or take, years old. Was I knew that if I worked hard enough and then could work a little bit harder, I could get over a threshold where things were okay. What I want to do is to help people understand how they can be way more than okay. But what that takes is not more effort. It's going to take that same effort or even less effort, but looking at other aspects, contextual aspects, stuff in your environment, stuff in the systems and the way you're looking at what you're doing that will really make things change in your life. So to be more concrete and specific, when I got into search engine optimization and really, doing what I do online, right, which includes search engine optimization, it includes conversion. The first thing that I really started making money with online was lead generation, which includes traffic plus conversion. So I was playing with both heads of that hydra, so to speak, right? Um, I needed to learn that. I needed to understand how to rank dependably, reliably. I needed to also build web pages on the internet. When someone landed on them, they would actually do something, right? Convert, make a decision, call, fill out a form, whatever it might be. Um, there was only so much I could do with that personally. There was only so many hours I could spend on it, only so much attention I could give to it, and until there really wasn't um, a lot more you could do with it, right? And so then we look at software that can automate things, or we could look at different different shiny objects, so to speak, right? That we can, try to apply that will get us better results. Or we might feel like, well, what we got into, I originally, when I got online, the main thing that I got into was search engine optimization, SEO, and it kind of almost inherently felt like the way to get my business better was to learn more about SEO. And I worked and worked and worked and worked at that for, I don't know, 5, 6 years. And when I say worked at it, I mean, I'm talking about like fully immersed spending hundreds of thousands of dollars learning, testing, trying, buying training, getting information from people that I had relationships with, all of that type of thing. And I could rank better, but that really just moved the notch up a little bit, right? A little bit and a little bit. And there's a lot of common advice that talks about really just doing what you're doing right now a little bit better every day, and you'll have a breakthrough. I think that it, that's better than not doing that, but it's not the right answer. The right answer is to pause, take a breath, take a step back, and really start to look at bottlenecks you've got in your business, things that are holding you back, limiting factors, like things that, okay, well, if I had 15 different customers calling me today for a quote or a sales opportunity that I had in my business, well, okay, understand really their business, get the on-site factors taken care of that they need to have, get their brand built out properly, their online entity, and then get them links and have all that in place. Like managing all that, you've got to be organized. But in order to be organized, what you really have to do is to stop and think about what you do each and every day with each and every project you work on. And I said project just because, like, what we're talking about here is not just business. It's health, it's relationships, and it's really wealth, right? And wealth is not solely related to the amount of money in your bank account. It's really about building things that are valuable that you can trade with people. So if you are currently running a one-man gang operation, which is kind of the way I came into this, right? I joined a company called OMG Machines, One Man Gang Machines. I was looking at it from a perspective of I need to do all this, as opposed to I need to understand all this so that I can have a greater impact. And it took a long time, and and really the downside I experienced was that when I had some physical injuries, I had a concussion, couple concussions, and I really wound up in a place where I couldn't work as effectively as I needed to work to keep all the clients and customers I had, and all the, juggling all the balls. Like when my ability decreased somewhat, uh, everything came crashing down, right? So had I had a sense before that point of what I could do to take what I knew and translate it into something that someone else could do to help me, right? I'm trading value, my knowledge, the way I understand things and can look at things and think about things. When I could take that and instead of just applying it to physical work harder, when I could take that and translate it into something that someone else could do, I'm offering them value. They're able to implement it. They get paid, they do stuff. Clients, customers, projects get taken care of in a way that works, right? Good enough, right? A lot of times this is about good enough. A lot of people talk about perfection and excelling and exceeding and being excellent and all that type of thing. I look at good enough because good enough is good enough. Good enough is good enough for results, for profit, for winning, for all sorts of things. So being able to translate what you know into instructions that someone else can follow is your sole job as an entrepreneur, unless you want to just have a job. if you want to ever have something more than a job doing what you already know how to do, then what you need to look at is a way to take what you know and put it into instructions and procedures and processes and instructions for somebody else to be able to take care of, at which point you've got a business and a life that can start to work without your direct effort on doing the things that you already know how to do. And going back through history, right? There's all this like hero's journey and these different narratives that have pointed humans to this reality, which is that as a person, as a hero, you need to go out into the unknown and conquer the chaos and the abyss, and conquer it in some way and bring it back to your people, and then be able to make sense of it, help make sense of it to them so that they benefit from it. And so today on this specific webinar, what we're going to be talking about is a way to do all of that in and apply it to your business, right? And so I talked a little bit earlier about like really what it means to be in this place where, which we all are, we are limited by certain factors. One of the factors that we want to tackle today that is limiting you currently is that you have not taken as much of what you already know and turned it into instructions and processes and procedures and training and teaching and coaching, where you can translate it to somebody else so that you can make money with what you know, and the people who you either pay or who have paid you benefit from it as well. So, Glenn, I talked quite a bit here, but Glenn's my business partner in one of the businesses that I've got called Web Alley, and this was something that has been lurking in my mind and my experience for a long time, my entire entrepreneurial career. But until I met Glenn and our third partner, who's not on here tonight, Mike Hayden, it wasn't until I really got together with these guys that I saw it as clearly as I do now, and that's really one of the major things that I want to help people be aware of and see, because every person listening to this has a lot of value they have, and in all likelihood, if you're listening to this, you're still looking at like, I want more, I want to do more, I want to succeed more, I want more income, I want less time involved with what I'm doing. The way to do that is to take what you know and turn it into instructions and framework and distinctions and clarity and details for someone else to be able to also benefit from what you know, in such a way that you, as the business owner or the purveyor of your information product or whatever it might be, benefits as well as the end client.
So if I hear you right, what I heard when you were talking about there was, let's say we were back in middle school and they're having a pickup football game and everyone's just kind of doing their own thing, that sometimes the athletes would prevail. But when we started having plays that were organized, when we started playing on the team, and you as the outside receiver that you played, or me at the slot that I played, we probably would know what each other was doing when we were running a route, that when one of us did something, we could actually go there and help the other one benefit because we kind of had a plan and plays and structure.
Yeah, plays, right?
Huh.
You look at football, right? And Glenn and I each played football. We understand pretty well a lot of what we talk about. It's a mini environment where we can look at what There's a reason why there are plays. There's a reason why people all understand what each other is doing to enough of a degree where they can operate independently for success for everyone. And that's really what this limiting factor is about, is that a lot of people who get involved with what they'll call entrepreneurship really becomes about them needing to do everything themselves. And while I believe there is a a definite benefit to doing that, stopping there is absolutely limiting how much impact and effectiveness and influence and capacity to earn you actually have. And what that means is you're actually limiting every person you work with ability to have a better life as well, right? You can't pay people more. You can't help more people if you're limited to what you can influence and affect. So like this is really about taking a step completely out of where you are currently as a player, so to speak, and starting to understand better strategy about coaching, about putting procedures in place where, you know, the strength coach on a team, we're talking about football, right? Your strength coach, well, he's not even coaching football, for crying out loud. He has no idea about plays. He doesn't have to call any plays, he doesn't have to do anything. But what he's doing is helping each of the people get better prepared to do their job better. And so this is about taking away the limiting factor that I personally have lived in for a lot of my life. And I know a lot of people that I've worked with. I say coached and taught and trained just because people joined programs that I was involved with folks in that capacity, right? This is the first thing that needs to happen, right? And I want to talk about understanding that properly, right? One of the reasons I talked about this as much as I did at the beginning to kind of set this up is that as the best receiver on a football team, there's only so much you can do, right? Whereas if you're the coach, you really are responsible for the entire team winning. And then that translates to the school, it translates to all sorts of things. And then from there, you look at, okay, who owns the team? Who moved professional? Like there are just levels you got to get outside of where you currently are to see how you can greater affect change and influence the impact that you have with the time that you have and the knowledge that you have. So the first step is getting enough knowledge where you can actually take on a role greater than just this like specific position that you play. Long time I was looking at becoming a better SEO. Well, I was looking at getting better and better and better and better at that specific role. Well, it translated somewhat to my business, but it didn't completely revolutionize it. It didn't change it fundamentally. I didn't have a greater capacity to help more clients or work on bigger projects. Right? And I'll circle back around at a point today and talk about that a little bit. But I want to hear more from you, Glenn, on what you might say about that.
Sure. You know, I've worked around, as you know, and a lot of people know, around sales environments, sales teams, sales groups for large companies over the years. And the one thing that always held true is, yeah, if you work hard, you can make a good living, you can make good money, you can have good results. But when you learn how to work a little bit smarter and then work harder, what you can achieve is exponentially different. You know, kind of as you were mentioning there a few minutes ago, you know, when it doesn't matter if your objective is here, whatever your goals are, whatever your objectives are, you still want to have a better life. So let's say that you want to be make X and you can run everything yourself and you can do everything yourself. Well, if you have better systems in place and you can do that same work, achieve those same outcomes with less time, now you have a little better life. You have more time to spend doing what you want to do outside of work instead of spending time on work. The same holds true with if you want to scale and grow your business, grow what you're doing. The better you get at understanding how to do things, like you were mentioning, the better you can put systems, standard operating procedures, whatever you want to call them, in place to either A, have someone, like you said, you can train and to do things for you, or B, you can have other strategic relationships to do some of these things. The more you understand how to do things, the easier it is to have other people doing it for you. Because if you don't understand them, it's kind of easy sometimes to be taken advantage of. Happened to me in the beginning. I've had different times that I was taken advantage of because I didn't know how to say, no, that's not how you should do stuff, or that's not what I want to have done. So I think the more you can get systems in place, the more you can have different education knowledge. So you know how to do things better, or you know how to do things for someone else to do them better. The more productive you can be, the easier it is to go from level A, B, or C, or stay at a certain level and just relax and pull back a little bit so that you can have that laptop lifestyle, if you want to call it, to where you can work hard when you want and play hard when you want. But it's very hard to do that without proper systems and structures in place.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've shared on Fletcher's Garage and some of the other places I share my own experience and what I've gone through is, I kind of talked about this time when stuff started not working well for me. I didn't have any of these things in place, right? Like I say, it was all in my head. It wasn't all in my head. It was on my computer and every place else, but it required me to be directly involved with every single step. And this might sound kind of weird, but like truly think about it. Take a second really and think about it. What I believed was the case is that nobody would be able to do what I could do with SEO, right? Get a new project, get a new client, get a new website, new idea for a affiliate project, whatever it might be. It's like, oh, well, I got it all. Let me just go to work. If I truly knew it that well, I should have been able to transfer most of that, if not close to all of it, to someone else to let them take care of it, where really now my job is about deciding where to allocate resources, right? To become a lot more strategic, so that I was more of the person responsible for where we're going to spend effort, and then other people would be able to benefit from that. And I was like, I'll say delusional. It wasn't that it wasn't accurate, but what it was is extremely limited, because I was not taking the time to put these things in place. And I was I'll say fairly successful, right? As a coach and trainer. Like I was actually putting these things in place, right? But I was not actually doing them in such a way where over time my impact really grew without me having to put more work and effort into it. And Glenn, I think you've probably got a couple things to say about that, just because we've talked so many times and you've shared some of your own personal experiences on it. But jump in and maybe run with that.
Sure. And just for anyone that's watching on the page, if you refresh the page, you actually see comments towards the bottom of the page now. Any comments you want to put on here to share with us or whatnot, we'd be happy to visit with and address those. Yes, I think, as we've mentioned before, more often than not, we're our own worst enemy. And as I've said a couple of times, you've probably heard this, Fletch, the biggest obstacle is the 6 inches between our ears. And I've been the most guilty of that. And just as you shared, when I started this, we had to do this, I had to do that. No one could do what I could do. Everything had to be custom for every client we brought on. drove my wife crazy when we started this company, 10 years ago. And so it was kind of funny. It wasn't until, I don't know, a couple, 3 years ago when I had gotten used or had learned to start to outsource certain things to certain VAs and having different people doing certain levels. But still, when it came to anything backlinking, anything on page, it was still stuff that I did myself, and I was still limited by that time, because that's the biggest limiting factor we have. We can always learn more. We can always have better procedures. We can always bring more people on to do different tasks, but we only have so many hours in a day and days in a week that we can devote to something. And it wasn't until a comment came up, and because we weren't doing one particular service for one particular industry that we'd done a lot for over the years, because I was trying to move into a different direction, that the comment was made, why aren't we doing this? And I said, well, I just don't have time to do that anymore. And so I was asked, well, why can't you train someone how to do that? And, I went from on Friday night saying, there's no way I can do this. This is just BS.
No, Glenn, dig into that more, because this is really the thing that set the stage for tonight. And this, you told me about this a long time ago, but this is really the crux of tonight.
Well, it was all about doing SEO, the on page and the off page, and all the different linking, the different systems and structures that I put together over the years. That I had to do this. It had to be me. I didn't have time to do it. So there was no way we could continue with a line of our business that had been very successful and fruitful over the years. And like I said, this conversation started on a Friday. And so I argued with myself all Friday night. This is BS. I can't do this. There's no way we can do this. And then I got up Saturday morning, and damned if within about 2.5 hours, if I didn't have a complete PowerPoint on how to do 90% of everything I do in optimization for every new client. And I didn't have to touch anything. So yeah, a lot of times we create obstacles that aren't there. We create burdens that aren't there, that if we really take a moment, like you said, take a breath, step back and say, what can be done without me? It may surprise us on what can really be done and how much really we aren't involved in it, as long as we create the procedures, we create the SOPs, the person doing it understands these forwards and backwards, and you have someone you trust to turn it over to.
Yeah. So like what that points to, I get a little psychological and esoteric, but frankly, everybody is that way. We all live in our own mind. Like when you really get down to it, if you believe you can do something better than someone else, or you're the only person that can do it in your own business. So there's two options there, right? You're right, or, well, so if you're right, do you know it well enough to train someone else to do it most of the way? If that's the case, you just saved yourself, as Glenn talked about, 90%. You saved yourself 90% of the time. Okay, so if you believe you know this so well, we'll get somebody else to do it for you, right? And whether it's somebody you train or somebody you hire or whatever else it might be, if you know it so well, find somebody else that can do it for you, because it's valuable. Like it really is a blatant contradiction to believe you know something so well that no one else can do it. That doesn't really make that much sense. Like unless you're some reincarnated super godlike hero, most people have most of the capacity that you do. And our job, our responsibility, our opportunity really comes down to maximizing our impact, right? So putting in place things that can increase that is really what building a business is about. And I think I spent as much time in school and doing trades where it was like, yeah, I know how to frame a house and repair a car and all this kind of thing, but I could mostly teach someone else how to do the same thing. Well, okay, now I got a framing company and a garage that I can, there's probably more things you got to figure out, but you won't even know to figure those out until you get someone else to take some of the burden, some of the time involved and invested that you have to put into every project, where you start to then look at some of these other things that are critically important and limiting how much impact you have. And when I say impact, like I want to pull that apart, because that's what I say I like to do. I think it's valuable, but what in the world is impact, right? It really comes down to trading value. Like, how much value are you trading if you're the only single person who is actually doing work that's worth something? If you don't have other people who are benefiting from the work you've put in, the hours you like, if you're prideful, as I am, like I think I can do everything as well as anybody. Okay, awesome, dude. Teach some other people to do it so you can help more people, right? And that was kind of this thing I had to really face over this last year, to say, you know what, while I believe that, and I'm not saying it's not true, but if it is true, prove it. Like, I'm from Missouri, Glendo's, Missouri. It's a show me state. All right, you think you're that good? Go ahead and prove it. Go ahead and show me. Go ahead and teach somebody else what you know. And if you're not good at teaching and training and creating procedures and processes and structures so someone else can do it, then you may not be as good at what you do as you think.
You know,
But yeah, go ahead.
one thing that sometimes I never realized, thought I was going to be a teacher or coach or something like that. Well, I coached sports and stuff as a little kid, but I never really understood until I started training in sales and then doing training other things, that satisfaction of when someone else gets it and that light bulb goes on for someone else. You know, we do a lot of, it's rare that we do optimization for one city. We do a lot of stuff for 20, 50, 100, 200, 500. We do a lot of large area optimization. And our structure that we go through to do that stuff is pretty refined, and it's exactly what we do. And just this last week, it was a smaller project we started a week ago with like 20 or 30 cities. And so when we started the project out and we started doing the special thing for everything, you know, I told my lead developer, let's just do this. And this is kind of, we want to do stuff. And I was very happy and kind of proudful. Sure, I thought he was like, well, sir, shouldn't we do this? Isn't this going to create a problem? Shouldn't we do it this way? I'm like, he's learned the system. I said, yes, thank you very much. That's exactly what we want to do. Please go on. But he's done enough of these that he knew that the directions I gave him were wrong, because I was doing things a million miles an hour with everything we have going on right now. But he caught it and said, should we change this? Can we do this or whatnot? Yep. And so I thought we only had half of the project done. And I messaged last night saying, where are we at this and that and the other things? Like, everything's done. We're ready for this. What's the next project? So you can slow down, take your time, create policies, procedures, steps. And if you do it in a concise way, you can teach a lot of people to do a lot of these things that really don't need to involve us as much anymore.
Well, so what you alluded to, right? You said explicitly, really, but I want to draw attention to it, is that each and every one of us only has so much time and attention and focus, right? And so you were going a million miles an hour on the stuff you work on, right? Lining up new clients, closing deals, that sort of thing, right? That's really kind of one of the primary things you do. But because you had someone in place that understood the nature of what needed to take place, he took the, I guess, implicit instructions that you gave, right? Like, hey, this is what we got to do. He understood them well enough because you had that system in place where he could be like, okay, this is what I heard, and it sounded like this is what you wanted to do, but this is what you taught me to do. So there's something not jiving. Do we want to really do the thing you taught me and you showed me that was kind of right, or what you kind of handed off on your way through because you were going to the next deal? That's really, really, really monumental. I said really like 3 times, and I meant to. Um, with if you're doing online marketing and whatever you call what you're doing online, right? You're getting 100 emails a day. You're looking at a bunch of different offers. You're talking to a bunch of different people, and you need to get to a place where the understanding between what the client's going to get, right, and what's going to get implemented is understood. You can't that if you ever shortchange that, right, there's going to be problems. But at that point, you as a salesperson, as a business owner, you've got to kind of say, okay, done. Let's connect that to the folks who do it, because we got to get the next deal done too, because I need to continue onboarding clients and creating more revenue and things like that. So like, okay, so I'm going to take a step back again and talk about one of the specific things that has happened to me. It has happened, continues to happen, in all likelihood happens to most people. When you feel responsible for doing all of these things, everything is custom, everything is one off. And I'm not saying there's not going to be some nuance, because inevitably there is, unless you're selling an iPhone, right? There's going to be like, well, what's the how difficult is it to rank, or what specific service do I offer, or how am I different than the next client? Like there's going to be some of that, but it's call it 5-10%, right? So I kind of lost my train of thought, but let me get back onto it. So one of the things that happens if you are in the place where it feels like you have to do all of that, you're not really going to be as outgoing and sell as much as you would if all of the systems were in place where 90% of that was done each and every time.
Well, it's no different than what we talk about for business owners when we're talking about them, and the question that's asked to them quite often from other business coaches or consultants. Are they working in their business or on their business, or a combination of those? Too many of us, sometimes we get muddled in the weeds working in our business, that we never work on our business. As we've talked about, you have the teeter-totter effect. I don't have any business, so I'm gonna go out and sell, sell, sell. Now I get some bunch of projects. I'm gonna work, 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 and oh crap, I'm out of work again. I have to go sell, sell, sell. Anytime you don't have time when you're working on your business as well as in your business, you're always going to chase your tail like a little dog.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I was a little dog.
Mm-hmm.
I got big projects and I got to sink my teeth into them, and I made good money, and they worked. And then it's like, okay, well, now what? Right? Now I got to go out and sell some more. Right? And so you're just constantly going back and forth, where like a while ago, and I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, right, I got to a place where I understood ranking on Google, and I say Google as a proxy for search engines, right? I understood what they were about, what the algorithms had to be about. And so it's like, okay, we need to have these signals in place, have them powerful enough and clear enough where our sites rank, our projects rank. At that point, the number one priority that I should have had is to get that out of my own head and into a format where other people could benefit from it. And in some ways I did. I did it through selling training, right? Through helping other people understand what I understood. But that then just put it into someone else's head, right? There was still not instructions like, okay, new client comes in. This is a new form fill comes in on your website. What happens? Okay, you look at the website, like all of those things are stepwise for the most part. I never, I say took the time. It was almost like a prideful thing, but then also just an ignorant thing. I say ignorant, like I'm not saying I'm dumb or smart, but what I was ignorant of, meaning I was not aware of, was how much more I could do with what I knew. And that is really the essence of what we want to convey tonight, and in these other webinars that we're going to run this week in different aspects of your business specifically, to be able to impart your knowledge into a form of structure that other people can do something with. And because I say I was an entrepreneur, I really wasn't, because I wasn't building businesses. I was a well paid consultant at best, but really like a trade. You know, I go out and I chase work, I get work, I do great work, I got paid well, and then I have to go chase again. And I think that's the step that a lot of people, they do that a while and they're just like, I almost rather have a paycheck at this point, right? Because just doing this cycle over and over and over again, it wears you down. And if anything comes up, like, you know, what I had with the, you know, concussions and stuff, you can get almost completely wiped out, right? Um, it's just it's not an effective strategy to operate with in your own life if you're taking responsibility for your own success into account.
Well, and I think what's hard for some people to really grasp, and it sounds crazy, but I promise you it's true, is the hardest we ever work is at the beginning when we're trying to get up to those first initial levels. Because I'll tell you wholeheartedly, when I was, starting off in this, making $6, $8, 10, $15,000 a month worth with an advertising agency, I was working my tail pretty hard. And right about that time, when I got up around 15 or so, I was lucky to reach out and know people that I could start bringing on some people to work for me with some procedures, some SOPs, knowing how to start doing that. And I was able to kind of sit back, like you said, go, this isn't too bad. And the more I kind of focused on having procedures for this product, part of my work job, this part and that part, then it was easy really to go and double what you were doing and not really work that much harder, because all you were doing then was I became a professional email forwarder. If it were an Olympic event, I could compete, because I can take and do anything we're doing and send it to this person and wait for it to come back, and send it to that person and wait for it to come back. And at that point, literally, I was fortunate enough, and a lot of times people say you make your own luck, and I think some of that is true. By being able to be in position to have time, I was able to go off on different tangencies and learn different traits that a lot of us haven't learned, to be able to start bringing this into my agency or that into my business. And as I brought a new service in, that wasn't me. That was someone new that I trained how to provide that service. So then I could have ways to either bring it out to our current clients or solicit new clients for service now A, B, C, D, or E. And when I get that email, yes, we're going to do it, they put the money in the bank account. This is what I need from you. I forward that email. And when it's done, I forward the email back to the customer that it's done. So I think anytime you can kind of get to those different levels and you can have different policies and procedures, and I'm not saying everyone needs to go out and try and make $1 million a year or $500,000 a year. It's whatever they're comfortable and what they really want to do. But you also want to have a life while you're doing those. And there's no reason why you can't do everything if you have the right procedures in place and the right systems in place.
Yeah. So obviously there's people who are making, $500 a month. There's people making $5 million a month. They all got the same time, right? But some people are not limited by these restrictions, and a lot of these restrictions are about systems. So there's a you alluded to it. You told the story, but like circle back around to like when you get those emails, right? And what it felt like before you realized, oh, well, if I have that, I can just hit forward. Like that really is massive, because there's been so many times, so many days when I was like, oh, do I really want to open my email? Like, do I really want to listen to these voicemails? Like, how much extra work is this going to take when I open this and see what I've got to do, right? With an ongoing client that's paying you, but there's a lot of work involved. So dig into that a little bit more, Glenn, because it really helped me start to really feel what it could be like when you've got some of these things in place.
Well, as you know, I came from a sales environment that I learned optimization, and then I got hosed over a couple of times by relationships I was in. So I had to learn to build a website, because 9 out of 10 clients that I would bring on to do optimization needed a new website. So it didn't make sense to optimize a turd. So I had to learn how to do this. And what you were referring to as the story I told you was right around the time I was getting my first developer really trained on doing what I want and how I want. I had this not lovely lady that we were building a website for, and I think, had 30 emails about the shade of red for a logo that we created that I didn't charge her for. And the logo was the first letter of her first name, first letter of her last name. But my blood pressure and my face started to get as red as this logo when it was, can we try this? Can we make it a little bit more red, a little bit less red, and stuff like that? And I was just about at my wit's end. And I finally had, right that time, this developer trained or whatever. And I said, let me try this. I forwarded the email to him. Okay, sir, take care of it. Come back. And I would forward the email back from her. And it was amazing when I started sending the emails each way, my blood pressure didn't go up. I didn't hate seeing that email in my inbox with that name on it. It was so much easier and so much more peaceful.
Yeah, and you also had another story about that related to the specific business we've got with Web Alley, and actually stuff that you did before I met you when we formed this company, where there was something with a compliance officer, and there was like a whole bunch of back and forth between you and the purchasing agent or whoever it was, and you were just like, oh, let me just talk to the compliance officer, and that got all settled like real quick in a hurry, right?
Oh, yeah, I built a website for a CPA, but they also manage investments for people, not as much as they market and advertise it. And the company that they were doing, if you do investments, you have a lot of compliance issues and everything you have to go through. And so I'm literally back in Nebraska, and I remember sitting in the basement of these people's home, had a friend of the family that was dying with cancer, stuff like that. So I'd go back, kind of help out, and I'd talk to him, and I'd see something on my phone, so I'd run back down the computer. And we went back and forth like 6 times one day, and the next day about 10 a.m. that time. So, I guess about noon. So 10 o'clock Pacific time where they were, I had 3 more emails, and I finally just called her and I said, would it be possible to get your compliance officer on a call with me instead of you talking to them and then talking to me back and forth? And she was just flabbergasted. You would do that? And I said, yeah, because in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'm done wasting my time with this crap. So she gave the compliance officer, mutual email to the 2 of us, introduced the 2 of them. I said, would you be able to jump on a call for a few moments? Jumped on a call with this compliance officer, and they had some pages that were kind of similar to some extent because, when you're doing investments, accounting, different things. And so there was some lost in translation as far as where the problems were. Literally 10 minutes into the phone call with the compliance officer, I said, is there anything else we need to fix? She said, nope, that's everything. Thanks, bye. So instead of 10 emails and probably an hour and a half or 2 hours of my time, in 10 minutes, going right to the person that had all their issues or had everything to do, we were done. I called the customer back and said, it's over with. We're good.
Yeah, and so that also is an experience I've had just in working with Glenn. I do what I do, and Glenn does what he does, and our third partner Mike does what he does. It's been incredibly, like, I kind of tend to have looked at myself as somebody who is pretty good at most things. And so I kind of had to do everything myself, right? I kind of was like, oh, okay, I'll get in, check around with the website. I'll get the website, built properly. I'll get technology all hooked up properly, all that kind of thing. So being able to work with somebody that actually knows certain things better, more proficiently, it really just makes things a lot easier. And so, that's just kind of a little bit of a side note when you've got some partners, and I'll just say partners in general, right? Whether they're business partners or people you've trained or people that you outsource to, what it does is it lets you then say, okay, here's the opportunity, right? Here's the thing that we need to account for and deal with, right? And take advantage of, not in like a weird way, like a uphanded way, but this is what it is. And then other people really can do a lot more with that when you can just say, okay, I'm really working on this piece. So one of the things I want to allude to, because we're coming up on about an hour into this, and we're gonna keep these around an hour. We'll probably run over each time, but give or take. Um, One of the things Glenn talked about a few minutes ago was that he had situations that came up where he had a relationship developed with a client who wanted to work with him in some capacity, right? Whether it was at SEO or building an ADA compliant website or with paid ads or whatever it might be, right? So all too often what people do is say, nah, I do SEO. That's all I do. Go somewhere else. As opposed to saying, wait, whatever I've got in place is working to generate leads, right? Prospects who want to work with me for some reason. So let me get these processes in place so we can continue to maintain that relationship and get those folks to a decision that we can fulfill on. And that's really going to be the next major um, limiting factor that we're going to talk about on the next webinar, which is really about prospecting and generating leads. And we're going to build up from that in a way that I think a lot of people have been a little bit blind to, because if you've got SEO and conversion well enough to get a phone call or a form fill, you can quite literally build any business if you start to look at things from a perspective of, okay, I don't know anything about XYZ, but I'm getting phone calls for XYZ. Who can do XYZ? And now I've got a business doing XYZ where I work in my strength and someone else fulfills and we both benefit from it. Glenn,
Yeah,
do you want to come
I think in
pontificate on that?
my experience of marketers that I've gotten to know fairly well, moreover, I'm going to say last 7 or 8 years, since around the time we met, was they have three primary forms of obstacles. They're either A, not comfortable talking about Louis the Llama. Louis the Llama always has my back, so don't screw with me because you don't want to you mess with the llama, you're going to get the horns. Business marketers struggle with one of three things. Either they're not comfortable and confident enough with their knowledge of whatever they're trying to sell. So if they're not confident about it and confident in it, they're not going to sell as much. If they're confident in it, they're not selling because they're not making enough presentations. If they're not making enough presentations, they're not getting in front of enough people with enough prospecting. Because if you can get in front of enough people and you can talk to enough people about what you do and you're confident in what you do, you can have all the business you want. So what of those three roadblocks is holding you back?
Yeah, that's good. That Sean had the purple llama comment, but he's got a real question here. What about setting up a referral fee network? Sean's great question. That's actually kind of the way I backed into working online. I was a general contractor in Phoenix, Arizona. We did home improvement, energy efficient home improvement stuff, and I was dead broke. Like the water got turned off because we were, I think, 3 months behind on the water bill, and it was not a great situation. So upon kind of learning SEO and then going out and actually doing something with it, actually implementing it, I built 60 websites, give or take, over a month and a half. Those websites generated a ton of phone calls, and they were all, I built the websites for my own construction company. There were things I did, there were calls I took. I was not looking at this as a way of being an online marketer. I just wanted to make sure that I was getting enough jobs to pay the bills and make some money and do better. But what that turned into very quickly is I started to see the opportunity because I had bought leads from like Home Advisor and these other companies that sell leads, and they're mostly crap because they sell them to 10 different companies and they're all cold, and it's just they don't convert very well for an actual local business person. But upon being able to generate those, right? I say generate meaning I was ranking and someone called me and they were like, "Hey, I'm Sandra and I've got a house in Glendale, Arizona, and I don't like, one of our bedrooms is really hot in the summer, and would you come out and try to help us understand like what you can do to make that not be the case, right? Because my kids sleep there and they don't sleep well at night, right? Like these were like real call. Like I had no interest in. I had no interest because I hadn't really um, experienced online work. So I was like, yeah, of course, I'll go out and do that. But what I did have, because I was a GC, is I had subcontractors that I'd worked with. And so at a certain point, I had so many calls coming in that I started talking to some of my subs, installation contractors and AC companies and solar companies and things like that. And I was like, what if I just, because I had the calls were all recorded and they had a whisper on the phone, and all the stuff that people do in lead gen, and they talk about doing lead gen. Well, I was doing lead gen for myself, right? I kind of I got into that organically. I created it myself. I won't say that other people didn't create it on their own as well, but I wasn't really following anybody else's instructions. But when somebody was calling, I'd like to know what they were calling about. So, um, consequentially, what I wound up doing was talking to my subcontractors, and I said, "Hey, how about I just forward these phone calls to you? Right? I know what you make, because I had prices, right? They were my subs. I knew what they charged per square foot or per run of duct work, or whatever it might be, right? Solar shade screens and yada yada yada. So because I kind of knew that, I could kind of back into the numbers, and I was like, hey, what, $25 a call. These are the last 5 calls I got. One was trash. It was a solicitor. These other 4 were solid. You're going to, like, if somebody's calling you and you can take the phone call, answer it properly, get somebody out to look at the job, get them a price, you're going to sell 1 or 2 of them, right? Just because it is what it is, right? Relationships are kind of really big and key, and professionalism really goes a long way. So that was really how I got into online marketing. Up until that point, I was just a more successful general contractor, and so that really is kind of like, oh, I stepped out of the position I was in to see a different perspective, and was like, oh, okay, well, I can, like, if I build another 20 websites here for these specific terms to rank for, I can make more money than I'm making now, and I don't have to go in the field at all. And that was, you call it a light bulb moment, you can call it a breakthrough, you can call it whatever you want. But what that really meant was I was now in a different box, still in a box, but it was a bigger box, it was a better box. And from that point forward, my income has come from ranking websites on Google and doing something with the traffic to build relationships and help that the people I had relationships with, right, the traffic, so to speak, make decisions to act on the stuff that I provided. So a referral fee, right, which is the kind of specific question that Sean was talking about, absolutely works, right? But what you're doing at that point is saying somebody else has all of these in place already, but I still have to be responsible for being able to generate a relationship to get them to a decision to talk to this other person, right? And that's beautiful, right? When you can get that clarity and you can say, oh well, I can do that all day long. That's actually really one of the things that is most central to what we want to talk about tonight. We've been talking about, hopefully, is understanding that the role you play and what you do is providing value to someone else, right? And so you're providing value to the person that you're referring and that you're referring to. And so if you can manage that relationship and have it be your own business, you now get a larger margin, more money, and a better relationship, and you get referrals that grow your own business and things along that line. I don't know, Glenn, do you have anything else to say about that kind of thing?
I do, because when I read it, I think two different things. Because based on my experience, you wrote it that way based on your experience. Yes, I have sites that I own that people pay me for leads, so they pay me what we call a referral fee. I also, that little niche that we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier that I found out way to hand off, was a niche of people in a certain industry that are all salespeople. And I kind of learned quickly when we started working with that niche probably 5-6 years ago, that when you have salespeople on board that are clients and paying you money, if I could put in a system that I called a referral fee network, and they would refer other people that they knew that weren't competitors to me, then I would give them a fee. I would discount part of what they were spending to me based on whom they brought to me. So by having my referral fee network, I was able to take one nice little niche and take it from one client to 70 clients in about a year and a half, because every time they referred me one of their friends, someone they met at a convention, someone they met on a Achievers cruise, if you will, then I'm happy to take and do Fletch's work for free that he was paying me $700 a month, because he's referred enough of his friends to me that now I'm making $7,000 a month. So I created that referral fee network within that niche. And then I didn't have to go out and solicit near as much, because I was constantly getting referrals, because there were people that wanted me to get my bill that I was paying them down to zero. And they had an expectation of how many referrals they had to get to me that paid me to do work for them to get their SEO down for zero. So there's different types of referral fee networks depending on your kind of perspective, I guess.
Yeah, that really what this points to is that at some point you have to realize the value you can bring and trade. So if you're in a position where you can generate traffic and relationships and new leads to another company, I say I'm living proof, but like I've personally experienced that. Glenn has in a different way as he just described, right? But being on this and listening to it, and Glenn and I have a lot of background in search engine optimization. That's really about getting in front of traffic, right? Getting in front of people. And you can call it, like, at the foundation of business, it's about three things. It's about traffic, conversion, and then delivery of the product or service. I like to call those things having a relationship, getting a decision they don't later regret, and then delivery of the product or service. So, if you, however you want to manage it or whatever you want to call it, you've got to figure out all three of these things. My personality is you've got to account for all of those. But because of my trade, SEO is a trade. Because of that, I like to generate traffic. I also like to help people make decisions. Delivery of the stuff, it's kind of like, you know, personality wise, right? And I'm trying to speak personally here. It's almost like after the sale, it's like, yeah, wait, now I got to do all this work, you know, and that's kind of the nature of, if you don't have systems in place that can deflate anybody that potentially is very good at these other two things, which is getting new people to generate a relationship with and make a decision. Sometimes those personalities don't cover all three of those aspects. It doesn't mean you don't have, but to make money, you have to be responsible for making sure that all of those take place, right? So if you are the person that's doing the fulfillment, you've got to go find ways to get traffic and help people make decisions, and then you just do whatever you're doing. So we're covering kind of comprehensively things that really can be limiting for you. And for me, well, for anybody, right, before you start to understand things more foundationally, you can get in a situation where you really don't know what to be working on. And that's why shiny objects, right, the new offer, somebody else driving around a new Lamborghini or Rolls Royce or whatever else it might be, gets your attention because it's like, oh, well, they've got it all figured out. Well, yeah, but those are the only three things you got to figure out, like, at all. If you get those three things figured out, now you're golden. Now you can just build and scale. And so I want to transition into talking about what scaling is about, because we talk about systems, it's about scaling. But I haven't heard many people talk about what scaling really is. But Glenn, you had something to say.
Well, I was looking at those two fingers on a thumb you just had there. So if I heard you right, you're saying we need to have traffic. So traffic could be from a website. It could be from trying to solicit people via email, face-to-face, door-to-door, social market, whatever. You've got to get enough people to raise their hand to say they're interested. Then you have to have a meeting with them, find out what they need, and know that you have a solution to present it to them. And then from the time they say yes, you've got to have a system to deliver those. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I think we have 3 webinars coming out about those 3 topics, don't we?
How about that?
That's kind of amazing.
It's almost like we thought about this before.
Well, those are the 3 roadblocks that, guys, we've done. We did some mastermind calls with some different people to really kind of pick their brains to make sure that these weren't just our perceptions, what other marketers are having problems with. And literally, if you have enough people raising their hand, if you know how to articulate and have a presentation and talk to them and be a trusted advisor, not a salesperson. Salespeople are dime a dozen. They get thrown away with last week's trash and the last week's news, or what I'm going to call it. But if you can actually become a partner with these people, and now they're referring you to people, you're making more money, you have systems that are easy to do, you can go on vacation, you can do whatever you want. That's kind of like what we're trying to share with people, because it's kind of nice to say that you're making X amount of money, which may be more than you've ever made before. And, oh yeah, I'm working about 10, 20 hours a week. So I want to go learn this other thing to be able to provide that delivery, that service. That's easy.
Yeah. So well, yes. Stop. So not like stop you, Glenn, but so a lot of people talk about systems and scale kind of like in just one, like, oh, systems and scale. Like, but I was kind of like, what in the world scaling about? Like, what is that? Like I understood kind of how it works. Like, it's like, okay, if I make $10 online and I've got a system in a large enough market, I should be able to make $1 million online, right? It's kind of like it follows some logic. But you've got to really kind of take things apart a little bit more, because if you had to work 10 hours for that $10 and you have to work 10 hours for every other $10, Okay, well then you have to spend 1,000,000 hours to make the $1,000,000. And so, like, one of the things I when I started doing online stuff with the knowledge I had, I took jobs. I was on like Upwork. I was an outsourcer. I was the people in, India and Pakistan and everything else that you might hire to do things. And so I was going through and optimizing people's websites and getting their on-page factors more clear. And I was working for like $11 an hour, and I was like, oh, well, this is better than yeah, at the time I had my construction company, but I was a bouncer still, and I was making $11 an hour as a bouncer, right? And I didn't get tipped. I got punched, but I didn't get tipped. So I was like, well, this is better, clearly better. But manually, personally going in and optimizing people's websites for $11 an hour, I realized was not going to ever get me out of the game. And this is a game. Money is a game. You there Unless you have a way to live well without playing this game, you better get good at this game. And I say good meaning you don't have to spend a ton of hours to get great results. And so this whole series is about helping you understand the things to focus on in this game so that you can win more quickly and then do whatever else you want to do with your life. Right? There are absolutely ways to live well. I'm not saying that you don't have to play the game, but if you're listening to this webinar, you want to be better at the game. So from having done that, I quickly realized, like, oh, well, I don't have to charge $11 an hour now. Now I can start to charge 25 or 50 or 75 or 100 or $200 an hour. Right? That was my way of scaling up. And from 11 to 200, it's 20 times more money. But I still was having to go in there and do the work. Right? I was still having to go in there and get the page titles right, and the URLs right, and the meta right, and the content right, and the schema right, and the images right, and the files named right, and all that stuff. And there was nothing. It was good, honest work. And I think coming from kind of a blue collarish background, it was like, well, that's what I do. I'm a mechanic, right? I build stuff. I fix stuff. If you want to own a business, it requires looking at things differently. You have to be able to get things set up so that other people like you can do what they do well. They can fix stuff, they can build stuff, and you make sure that they actually have work. Because these other factors. Yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
All right. Well, it goes from being a worker to manage a company, like you mentioned early on. There's one thing for us to build a job for ourselves. It's another thing to build a company. So when you actually build a company where you are providing more services to help more people, because you bring in more people to help you facilitate that. So it's a big difference. And it's kind of a mind shift at times to go from being the employee to the employer.
Yeah. And I don't like being an employer, right? The person who pays W-2 wages to somebody. That's one way of doing it. I don't have employees. I have never paid W-2 wages to anybody. But being responsible for a business, I can still accomplish the same things with partners and outsourcers who have 1099s or B2B or whatever it might be, right? And so there's a whole lot of complication that comes from having W-2, and there might be some benefits as well. I have not personally done that. And you can still have a business that has processes and procedures in place before and without knowing all of that other stuff that comes from, oh, good grief, like, who can I hire? What can I discriminate against? Like, all these different, like, there's a lot that can come from that. So I don't really look at myself as an employer. I look at myself from a position of like personal responsibility of like saying, I've got to be responsible for these three things. Like, which of these am I going to do? All of them? One of them? Two of them? all three of them, like you can't win at business without those three, right? Without relationships, decisions, and delivery, or traffic conversion delivery. You just those are the three elements that make a business work. So you can figure out a bunch of different ways of doing this, but you have to be personally responsible for all of those being taken care of properly to have something that works. You do it yourself, which I've done. It can be nerve-wracking, it can be profitable, but there's also times of famine, right? And so one of the things that in working with Glenn and some other, obviously the journey I've had through, I had my first business when I was like 16. So, I guess 30 years, right? So 30 years I've had a business. It's taken me this long. So I'm not that smart, right? But I'm at a place now where I want to share the insights that I've gained over that time, which are that if you can get somebody to help you with things that you figure out that they do well, and you can make sure they do it well, life becomes much easier. And that's what scaling comes from. Scaling comes from a process. It doesn't come from doing more. It comes from having processes and systems, or whatever you want to call them, like, SOPs, standard operating procedures. It comes from having those in place. And you might then need an SOP for, well, how do I then pick the next person that's going to come on and help me grow this business, grow the impact, grow the influence that I have, right? If you don't have those things in place, your only option is to work harder. And that's, kind of where we started. That's the answer to get out of the hole. Once you're out of the hole, now what? Okay, the answer is not to continue to try to work harder. There are benefits from understanding what that is and what that means and what that feels like, but it doesn't really scale. It doesn't really put you in a position to impact and influence more people, unless you're one of a handful of people that are extraordinarily lucky. And unfortunately, what we see in pop culture are these people who happen to be extremely lucky, who offer advice about working hard because that's what they feel they did, but they had all sorts of factors already in place that let them win with more effort. There are a few of us who are in that situation. I'm extraordinarily lucky. All of us are at times. But what you need to do is to build enough building blocks, right? These systems and these pieces of knowledge and these things you can help other people with, so that when luck does happen, you've got something to trade, right? You don't have to beg anymore. You actually can trade because you've built. So that's kind of the essence of what I wanted to impart on tonight's webinar, as far as what people can do if they're looking to improve the situation of where they are because of what they can do entrepreneurially in their business. It's to build in such a way where you can trade. And the primary thing that a business has, period, like if you look at it, what do they call them? Franchises, right, Glenn? We talked about this a little bit before, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's a franchise? It's just a bunch of processes and a logo.
Yeah. But
and
those
people pay $500,000 for it.
Amen. Those processes can be valuable because when you get them down to where you can rinse, repeat, go over and over again, McDonald's made a lot of money off of beef and bread.
Yeah. Well, is it really beef though? I don't know.
I don't know if it's really bread.
Partially beef. There's some rubber in those buns, I think. But regardless, it points to the fact that having a process and standards that's like, this is how it's done every time. Well, you've got value. I really like double cheeseburgers from McDonald's,
Mm-hmm.
and egg McMuffins, and I go there still, even though It has nothing to do with health. It's just like, oh, it's tasty. It's the same every time. I know what I'm getting. So that points to people being able to buy from you because they know what they get when they
Mhm.
buy from you. And if you do not have these standards and processes in place, it's going to be way harder for you to sell anything you do because you're not really certain about what you're going to be able to deliver. And we're going to get into that on a subsequent webinar as well. It's one of the pieces that we're going to cover in this series.
So for anyone watching here, just so you kind of have a heads up, tomorrow night at 5 p.m., we're going to limiting factor number 2.
That's 5 p.m. Pacific, correct?
Everything revolves around Pacific in my world.
Your Cali world.
Yes. Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific and Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And we're going to really dive into 3 of these other limiting factors and kind of share some experience, insight, ideas, and kind of let you guys know kind of what we're trying to do here and what we're trying to share.
Yeah. So really appreciate everybody who's been on tonight, being involved, listening, contributing, asking questions. But this is really designed to stack, right? So the entire series is going to help you see the picture much more clearly. Like we wanted to dive into like stuff that limits us, us and yeah, right at the same time. Yes, I've coined a new word. We're going to run with it. So each of those webinars is going to dive into a different topic, but then taken together, they also form a different picture that helps you get out of the box that you might be in, that I've been in, definitely, that I'm still in, right? We're all in boxes, right? But you've got to get to a place where you can get out of that, gain some perspective on understanding what I can do to build better without necessarily trying to just work harder, persevere, put more time into it, more effort, whatever it might be. So, if you're watching this, you can go to Glenn. Do you have a link that you can share for people who are watching this on the live stream who have not signed up for notifications yet? I can just say it's weba11y.net. So it's Web Alley, but the L's are replaced with ones.net / yeah. Go ahead.
All right, you're right.
If I keep talking. Yeah, so it's weballey.net, spelled with ones instead of Y's, / webinar sign up, and there's dashes between each word. So I don't have that handy. I will put
I have it. Where can I put it, buddy?
Well, so if we want to screen share, we could do that. But what I will do is circle back around to where we are streaming that for people who are actually watching. Now I lost Glenn. Now I'm solo. I'm alone. I'm scared. So I will drop that link to sign up. I'll bring Glenn back here.
I was trying to put a comment in there and I hit the wrong button.
It's all good.
There we go. I just put it in the chat here if you can share that with people.
Yes. Yeah. So I will drop this below the video that you're watching currently on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're watching this currently, so you can sign up to get notified and get into those other streams that we're doing this week, this Thanksgiving week. We're recording this live in 2020. So really excited about this. A lot of bumps and bruises went into getting to the place where I currently am and want to share the experience and the insights that I've gained through going, through the whole thing. So I know Glenn feels the same way. He's been a great partner to have in a lot of these respects, and is in a lot of ways responsible for me being able to share a lot of this, because while I knew it was important, I didn't know what it was actually felt like to have a lot of this in place. So trust me a little bit that you want to hear the rest of what we have going on. And the next session we're going to be talking about is lead generation as a system and a process you can standardize really and just have in place in your business so that you are always getting calls. You're always getting calls. That was all I was trying to do with my construction company. If I was getting decent calls, I was going to make money. A lot of businesses operate the same way.
Mhm.
So we're going to dig into that next session tomorrow and explore that more, pull it apart, and help people see it more clearly. So for tonight, I think we are pretty much wrapped up, Glenn.
Yes, and if we miss anybody with getting a message to us, we're going fast and furious. Again, you have tomorrow afternoon, Friday afternoon, Sunday morning. Please message one of us. We'll make sure to give you the proper link. We don't want anyone to miss anything. And yeah, I mean, there's no reason if you're doing what you need to be doing, you can't have business coming on. I mean, Flex and I have talked about how many projects that I've brought on the last month of people that reached out to me because of everything I was doing. I said a phone call yesterday, and I have to give a quote out tomorrow before we jump on for a company that owns 9 businesses for 9 different websites and stuff like that. So money is still being spent if you're putting enough out there in the world that it comes back to you.
Yeah. And that direct discussion about 2020 and everything's uncertain and nobody's spending money. It's absolutely not the case. Things have changed, but things are happening. So get in with this vector and this flow of where things are actually happening to understand where you can put yourself so that things are flowing to you as opposed to away from you, which I think might be interesting to a lot of people.
Definitely makes life easier.
Yeah, definitely, man. All right. Thank you so much, Glenn. Thank you, everyone who has joined us. And we will catch you on the next webinar, which is tomorrow on Wednesday, as well as Friday and Sunday of this week. Take care. Talk soon. Bye.